Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on our JobNimbus 101 workshop. Today is our last workshop.
Really?
On automations.
Oh, okay.
For the past multiple weeks, we've been talking about what are automations, how to create automations, and how to create specific automations using the trigger records that are available to you. Today, we are finishing up this series on automations by talking about how to troubleshoot your automations if you find they're not working correctly. I'm Dan.
And I'm Logan. We're so happy to have you all here with us today. Now, automations are one of the most powerful tools in JobNimbus. And like any powerful tool, that can be very useful, or it can be used inappropriately or unintentionally. For instance, a chainsaw is an incredibly powerful tool that you can use to quickly cut down a tree, carve that tree into a cute grizzly bear statue, and give that as a gift for the upcoming Father's Day holiday, if anybody's forgotten about that. Anyway, so you can use a chainsaw for very important and useful purposes. But if you misuse a chainsaw, you could end up removing one of your own limbs, which is incredibly negative unless you're in The Evil Dead.
That escalated quickly.
A little bit.
Yep. So today we're going to be talking about how to use this tool correctly. Now we've gone ahead and we have created a wonderfully terrible automation for you. And that is this contact follow-up automation. So for those of you who will be watching this later on YouTube, go ahead and pause the video now and mark down all of the issues you find with this automation. There will be a quiz. But we are going to be going through these issues together. Now, the biggest issue that we find when people say their automation is not running correctly is with their event-based automations and the modified checkbox. Now, to reiterate what the modified checkbox is it's right here in the condition. Let's pull up a condition and look at it. It's the only if blank is modified right here. Now, what this does is it tells the automation to only run if this specific condition has been modified in some way, such as in this one, if the contact has been moved into the inspection status. Now, if we look at this, all three of these conditions are marked as only if modified. Now, it is highly unlikely that a contact type and a contact status will be modified at the same time. So we suggest, since the contact type is hardly ever changed, that you uncheck the only if type is modified in the type condition. This will really help specify when your contact will trigger the automation by saying that it will trigger only if the status is modified. Now, the other side of this coin is we find that a lot of times with event-based automations, the automation will trigger unexpectedly or more than anticipated. And that means that you might want to look into your conditions and see if there's a condition that you should check the only if modified checkbox to make sure that the automation will only run if that specific condition has been modified.
So this solves some problems with this automations, but the eagle-eyed or eagle-eared among you may notice that there's a few others. Now, in order to find these, I'm going to go ahead and read through this out loud, see if you can identify what's going wrong. So we start with the when part of our when, if, then statement. When a contact is created, if the type is equal to customer, and I'm going to check this box. It says all, so all these have to be true. I'm going to add an and between each of these statements. So if the type is equal to customer, and if the status is equal to inspection and it's just been modified, and if the status is equal to inspection complete and it's just been modified, then do the actions. So you may know, and it's very important, a contact can only be in one status at a given time. In fact, everything in JobNimbus can only be in one status at a given time. And this will only trigger if they're a customer and they're in this status and they're in this second status at the same time. That's actually impossible. This will never trigger. So let's try a few things to fix it. Let's try switching it from all conditions to be true to require any conditions to be true and see how that reads. Now it says when a contact is created, if the type is equal to customer, or if the status is equal to inspection, or if the status is equal to inspection complete, then do the actions. Well, here's the problem. These are ors, so it's just going to say the status is equal to customer. We created contact, let's do the thing. And it's going to totally ignore these other two because this is so broad. Well, now we're going to send out a bunch of emails and create a bunch of tasks that we don't want to. So we need to put it back to and we have to get rid of one of these two statuses. Now, if I wanted to have the functionality of working with either of these two statuses, what I would do is I would duplicate this automation and have one set to inspection and the second set to inspection complete. So for the time being, I'm going to delete this one.
That is really good. And it really helps to read it out loud. And for those of you that were listening, you might have been like, wait a second, there's something else wrong with this. And that is with the when part of the automation. Right now it says when a contact is created, if it is in the customer type and if it's in the inspection status, then run the automation. Well, the inspection status is actually a bit far down our workflow. And we don't usually create a contact and throw them into the inspection status because it's so far down our workflow. So that means that this automation is not going to run. What I would suggest is we change this from created to created or modified. Now it says that if a contact has been made into a lead, moves down our workflow, as soon as it moves into the inspection status, it's going to trigger our actions. But if our sales rep is knocking on a door and the contact is not even in JobNimbus yet, if they're knocking on the door and the person says, hey, I want an inspection right now, they can do the inspection and create the contact in JobNimbus, throw them into the inspection status, and our automation will trigger for both of those.
Nice. So this now looks like the automation is set where it should be. There's actually one more invisible problem with this. But first, let's go over just a few general tips. When we're doing one of these automations, if we want to make sure it's working right, I find it best to read through it out loud like I did earlier. Now, when I do that, I might want to go inside my individual actions to check and make sure that they make sense as well. And if this still doesn't get me feeling comfortable, I might even write this all out on a whiteboard. And that allows us to see any problems with logic that we couldn't see otherwise.
That's a good pro tip.
Yeah. So now let's look at the invisible problem. And that's actually with the send email part. So I want you to remember that the sending email is inspection follow-up and our trigger record is contact. Now let's update this to save all those wonderful changes that we made. And let's go look at that template. So we're working on inspection follow-up, and remember our trigger record is a contact. So if I read through this, it says job primary contact first name. It was great seeing you. Thanks for meeting with us. We'll meet you again on task date start at task date time. Remember this project will cost payment total. Thanks again, location name. Now this could make sense, and you could say, oh yeah, I expect that each of these will populate correctly, but you'd be wrong. JobNimbus is a clever system, but like all computers, it only can do what it's specifically told to do. So when I'm looking at a contact, it doesn't know what a job primary contact is for that contact. It doesn't exist. It also doesn't know what task we're looking at, so it can't provide the task date start. I could have a ton of tasks or none at all. So these will come up blank. Same thing with the payment. Now the location will show up because a location is higher in a hierarchy than a contact. If we look at our template fields, if I'm using a contact, I only want to use the fields that are under contact. The same is generally going to apply to jobs. If my trigger record is a task, I can use things in the task, and assuming I've correctly related a contact that it lives under, I could also use things in the contact. Same thing as with the contact, I can use things from company and location because that is in a larger nesting doll than the contact. But I can't go down the ladder. So a contact can reference a company and location, and a task can reference a contact, but a contact can't reference a task. So I could fix all of this, but that would be very boring. So instead, we're going to use the magic of TV to check out what we're going to use instead. Now, this references the contact first name instead of the job primary contact first name. Thanks for meeting with us. And you'll notice that the fields are contact fields or location fields, ones that we know we can call from a contact. Now, you may have to do a little bit of trial and error with this on your own, but if you use the guiding principle of you can only go up and not down the hierarchy of the record, you should be in a good place.
So right there are a few steps to help you troubleshoot your automations. We really hope that this automation series has really helped you in removing those repetitive tasks that you're doing every day and help you make your company more efficient.